One thing that you have to master when trying to scale to 100K months is 80/20 daily emails. Now, there's so many high ticket businesses or service-based businesses that I see still using really old and outdated strategies like sending lots of value or emailing not very frequently. And frankly, it's really just not serving the business all that well. And so today on the channel, this is not going to be one of our standard videos. This is going to be a mastery video, and one of the mastery videos is where we're going to go very, very deep into helping you understand how you can add this one component inside of your business to ultimately get more book calls and more results. And we're going to give you a lot of details. We'll leave a little bit back. For example, we're not going to show you some examples of the emails. We're going to leave that inside of our paid for programs like Media Firestorm, and clients will see examples as well as getting the ability to ask questions and things like that. But in this video, you're going to learn a tremendous amount about these 80/20 daily email sequences and really, what you can expect to get out of it.
Now, quick earnings disclaimer, we do talk in this channel about hitting 100K months or tacking on your next one, but we don't promise any kind of results. We have no idea who you are or whether you can implement it. We're really just sharing the lessons that we have along the way. For any of you that are listening to this and are looking to scale the business, if you're coming back to the channel, welcome back. If you're a subscriber, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're new here, please drop a like on this video if you find it valuable. And without any further ado, let's dive into the video itself. Now, the first thing that I want to focus on is what are 80/20 daily emails in the first place and why are they even important? Now, I get really annoyed when I go into a new business or we start working with a new client and I hear this phrase, I just need more leads in my business. And the reason it frustrates me and it gets really frustrating is that so many people already have existing leads in their business. The amount of people that come to me saying, yeah, I want to add 10,000 new leads into my business in the next 12 months, and yet are sitting on an email list of 15 or 20 or 25,000 leads is absolutely hysterical to me. And one of the things that's really important for you guys to understand is that just because a lead hasn't been communicated with in a long time does not mean that that lead is dead. Case in point, when me and my business partner first started Media Firestorm, they were bringing into the business an email list of about 7,000 leads. And to no exaggeration, she had never actually sent any emails to this list. And probably the last time that she'd ever even done any kind of promotional thing to the list was somewhere in the region of 6 to 7 years previously. Now, in the first 120 days of that business, I emailed that list and my list every single day, and we were able to pull a significant portion of revenue, multiple six figures out of that list in that time frame, just from communicating with them daily, but doing it in a very particular way. Now, when we talk about, okay, what is an 80/20 email and what does it actually do? Well, the first thing that I want you guys to understand is how these emails work and what we should be doing. So an 80/20 email is really just an email that you're going to be sending out that's going to be 80% story focused with just a 20% focus on selling. And the way that you can think about this is think about it just like television. When you were watching TV as a kid, you would watch 14 minutes of content that was highly entertaining, and then you would get hit with 3 minutes of advertisements, and then they would rinse and repeat that cycle again and again and again. The first thing to really understand is the reason that we want to be doing an 80/20 approach with emails is that most people are going into their email inbox because they are bored. They are either starting their day, or they are somewhere in the middle of their day, or they're towards the end of their day. But people go into their emails when they need a break. And so one of the first things that's really important to understand is that, one, we want to be reaching these prospects on a consistent basis, but two, we want to be doing it in a way that is entertaining. For value, think about why do you keep your Netflix subscription? What value are you getting from Netflix? It's entertainment. It's something that gives you joy when you're bored. And so one of the first things that I want to help you rewrite inside of your brain here is that every single email that you do has to be value centered. And the reason that we want to do daily emails inside of this process, and we'll talk more about cadence shortly, is really just that the more marketing you do, the more sales you make. Now, this is going to be a big, like red flag for a lot of you people. A lot of you are going to be like, in my industry, we can't send emails every day. And I just want to clear this out for you really quickly. In every single industry, it doesn't matter whether you're working with attorneys or B2C or high-level businesses or Fortune 500 companies, everybody receives tons of emails every single day. What you have to do is find a way to be able to authentically market to these lists on a consistent daily basis, because the more times you email your list, the more money you're actually going to make from it. I'll talk more about cadence and why this is important later, but I want to start with this like very simple analogy. Like, imagine you had a shop on the high street, right? And you had a store and you were trying to sell something in that store every day, but you only open one day a week, right? And then you said to your friend, hey, Jonathan, I've got this flower store on the high street. I'm only open one day a week. You know, I'm only selling to people one day a week. How can I grow the business? He'd be like, dude, are you an idiot? Open more days. Like, why don't you open 5 days a week or 3 days a week or 7 days a week, right? It's really obvious when you think about something that is an in-person location to do that. But when it comes to email marketing, we seem to think that it's a completely different concept, but it's really just the same. The more days that your business is quote unquote open for business, the more opportunities people are going to have coming in. You know, we'll talk more about unsubscribes and why they're actually not that important later, you know, but if you've got someone coming into your store every day, you are going to have more sales coming in, right? If they're coming in 7 times a week rather than once a week. And so this is the basic premise of the first thing that I want to help you understand, is that plugging in this conversion system is going to be one of the things that's going to help you to get more book calls and more throughput inside of the business. And it's fundamental, especially if you're spending a lot of money on advertising dollars and you're spending tens of thousands of dollars or even hundreds of thousands of dollars every single month to get leads and to get them into your process. Why would we not have a system on the back end that really takes a short amount of time to market to them? The second thing that I want you to know about these value-dense emails is that they're actually very high leverage. So if you've got 1,000 people on your list, or if you've got 100,000 people on your list, it's going to take you the same 15 to 20 minutes every day to write an email to go out to all of those people. And so this is a very leveraged sort of amount of time that you can spend inside of your business. And you don't even have to do them daily if you don't want to. You could actually sit down on a Sunday, blast out 5 emails back to back, and you are going to be good to go. One of the first things that we've talked about here is, you know, doing more volume. And I want to talk about some of the benefits. Now, the first benefit that you're going to get from doing these 80-20 daily emails is that you're going to get like more core volume. And so really simple, I want you to think about this for a second. In this example, let's say you've got, for easy math, 10,000 people on your email list, right? You've generated leads and you've got that many. When you send one email that goes out to that list, depending on how good that email is and how good of a copywriter you are, you're going to get probably around 0.3 to 1% of people to click whatever it is that you're selling inside of that email. And so with 80-20 emails, we sell in every single email, but it's a soft sell. And we'll talk more about how you go about through that in a second. If you imagine right now that you email once a month, one of those emails is going to give you, if you've got a 0.3% click-through rate, it's going to give you 30 clicks. If you've got a 0.5% click-through rate, it's going to give you 50 clicks. And if you've got a 1% click-through rate, it's going to give you 100 clicks. So if we take somewhere in the average of that, right? Let's say on average, you're going to get 40 clicks, a 0.4% click-through rate from the emails that you send. Well, if you send one email a month, you're going to get 40 people that are going to click through. If you send one email a week, you're going to get 160 clicks that are going to come through. If you email every day, Monday through Friday, that's 22 times a month on average that you're actually going to be reaching out and getting those people coming into that list. So if we do that math, right, that's 880 clicks that you're going to get. And if you email every single day, which by the way is what we would recommend for most of our clients to do, then you're going to get 1,240 clicks. Now, depending on how good your conversion mechanisms are, can depend on how many calls you're going to book. But the thing that's really important to understand is that this is 31 times more effective than doing it once a month. Now, you may get unsubscribes, you may get people who don't want to hear from you, but the point of this business is to generate sales, and it's to make offers to customers to get them coming through. So the first thing that we're going to get is they're actually going to get more volume of opportunities of people coming through. And if you have just a standard conversion asset, we use, for example, something we call a minimum viable calendar. It's just a basic calendar optimized for throughput, and these will typically convert at about 10%. I also have a friend who operates in the men's health space, helping men with their relationships, and he's got a video sales letter that converts about 10% of people who land on it into a book call. And so 10% is a pretty average conversion rate that you guys can expect to achieve when you're trying to book calls. Now, if you email once a week, that's 4 calls. If you email 4 times a month, that's 16 calls, right? But if you're emailing 31 times a month and every single day, we're looking at 1240. Even if it's less, even if it's 1,000 people, we're looking at 100 calls. The difference between this one element inside of your business can literally be a 25x improvement in terms of throughput. And so the first benefit of doing this process is just you are going to get more booked calls by doing it. The second benefit, and this is really, really key, is what we call consistency of message. Now, I want you to think for a second about billboards, right? You're driving to work, you've got a commute, and every single day you see the same billboard, right? Or you see the same TV advertisement, or you hear the same advertisement on the radio. When you hear that advertising message consistently, day in, day out, and all of the time, it's going to stick into your brain with more certainty. And even if you're not ready for that service right now, they're going to be front of mind and front of center, and that's going to be something you're going to be thinking about. So the second benefit that you're going to get, as well as an increase in click-through rate, is actually better consistency in visibility in front of your customers. Even if these customers are not opening up these emails, they are still seeing the emails coming from you every single day. And when they see your name and they see these subject lines, which are related to you, the business, results, whatever it may be, then they're going to be having you top of mind. And so consistency in the messaging is actually a really important factor of this strategy. And the longer you do this daily process and the more consistent you are, the more this affects compounds. Now, the other thing that is also very, very highly rated that not many people think about is the fact that, one, this is free. It doesn't cost you a fucking penny to do this process. It's very, very free. And when I say free, you have some software costs, right? You might spend $500 or $1,000 a month on, the marketing tool. But in comparison to what you can convert, if you've got 100 sales calls booking in, and you're making, $100,000 in sales, $500 for your email software is practically a negligible cost. More or less, once you pay for the software, this is a free thing that you can do in your business for very, very low cost. And most people don't do this, especially high-level people, but you can add a lot of extra revenue. So like I said, this is going to be a free process for you to do, but it's actually going to get you consistent calls daily. And I promise you, your sales team is going to be very grateful for you having these calls coming in and for people reaching out. And the power of this method is that you'll often find that you'll be emailing people who aren't going to buy right away. And so if you think about it this way, let's say that you're running advertisements and you want them to, click on your ad and you want them to book in for a call immediately. All of this is optimized for like an immediate sale. You might have some retargeting, maybe you follow up with them for 7 days afterwards, but more or less, you're trying to get somebody to immediately take an action in the first 7 days. But we know statistically, if you look at a chart and we've got day 0, day 30, day 90, 180 days, and then a full year later, the amount of people that are going to buy on this chart is very minuscule, right? And over time, you're going to see this chart rising. And for example, in the first day, it's quite likely that you're only going to get less than 3% of people to buy. These are the buyers who are ready to go right away. Now, when you get into the next 30 days, again, these are estimates, not exact numbers, but you're typically going to find there's going to be more people, maybe another 5% of people who are going to be ready to buy within 30 days. Now, when you go up into this chart again, you're probably also going to find another 10% of people on top are going to be ready in the next 90 days. You've got another 10% of people who'll be ready in 6 months. and then another maybe 20% of people who are going to buy a year out, and the chart goes on and on and on. I actually had a customer who joined recently, and I had sent them, believe this or not, 472 emails before he bought. And I said to him, hey man, I just checked in the system and we've sent you 472 emails. Why did you buy now? And he was like, oh man, I always knew I was going to buy from you guys. And the emails just kind of kept me in the loop. And, when I was ready, I decided to just click a link and move forward. 472 emails. It's insane. How many of you are going to even bother to follow up with a lead like that when it comes to Facebook ads? Well, you're not. I know you're not going to. So this system is really designed to get you a lot of back-end sales. And so the longer you run it, the more effective it gets. Now let's talk about frequency, because the number one question that I get and the number one pushback we get about sending daily 80/20 emails is, Jamie, I don't want to send a daily email. Isn't that going to piss off my audience? Aren't people going to get annoyed? And to be fair, some people will. But what I want you to really think about here inside of this process is just simple numbers. So let's say you've got 1,000 new people this month that have come in and have subscribed to your emails. And you're going to start emailing them, let's say every single day. So you get an email a day that's going to be coming out. There are going to be a portion of these 1,000 people where they're not really into your message, right? There's going to be probably every single day, you're going to have maybe 5 to 10 of these people that are going to drop off. Now, if you send an email every single day, you might find that at the end of 30 days, you've had 300 people that have unsubscribed. And so a lot of people are saying, man, Jamie, I just lost 30% of the people that I just acquired. Isn't that a bad thing? And the thing I would say here is that you're just focusing on the wrong metric. Again, think about the store analogy, right? You've got a store and you're selling flowers, and you went from being open 1 day a week to 7 days a week, right? Now what's happening is you're getting more people that are actually coming into the store, okay? So before you had maybe 10 people a day that came in. Now you've got 50 people that are coming in across the whole week because you're open for 7 days. Now imagine if the metric that the store owner was looking at was how many people walked out without having a conversation. When you were only open 1 day a week, there was probably 5 of the 10 people who came in, looked around, and walked out. But when you're open 7 days a week, that number is now inflated dramatically. Now maybe there is 20 people that are coming in, looking around, and then going out without speaking to anybody. Now, if as a business owner, you were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. We went from 5 people walking out to 20 people walking out. Maybe we should go back to opening 1 day a week because less people walked out. That wouldn't be a smart thing to focus on. Why? Because you don't make any money from people walking in or walking out. It's a metric that does not matter. Now, if you reduce down the amount of people that do that, sure, you might influence more sales. But what is the important metric? It's sales. How much money you make is what you measure. And so when you open 1 day a week and you had 10 people and now you've got 50, you might make 10 sales instead of 2 sales. And so it's like, was this worthwhile? Yes, absolutely. It was worthwhile to open up more days in the week. Obviously, you moron, that makes so much sense. But when we think about email marketing, we think differently. And so one of the things that's really important to understand about frequency is that you want to measure the part of the business that actually matters. And here's what matters: sales. So when you're looking at this in your business, whether you sell with a checkout cart, like an e-com product, or whether you sell via calls, it's ultimately throughput. And so one, are you getting clicks every day? And by emailing more days in the week, are you ultimately getting more clicks across the month? That's a great thing to measure. Are you getting more calls booked, or are you getting more checkout people landing on the checkout? And ultimately, are you getting more sales? And so frequency is really just a measure of sales throughput. Now, can you be writing these emails in a way that isn't going to piss people off? Absolutely. And this kind of comes into the next thing that we talk about, which is why we focus on these 80/20 emails. So 80/20, what am I talking about here? 80% of this email should be focused on a story, and 20% of this email should be focused on a soft pitch. I'll give you a really good example. There's a client of mine, her name is Sandra, and Sandra helps people to basically have transformations when it comes to their health. And, a lot of the time when she sits down to write these emails, she gets very like specific and marketing language. She'll start emails with questions like, hey, are you looking to improve your health? What happens when you open an email and the first thing you read is a question? You think, oh, this is a sales email. I'm going to click out of it. I'm not interested. And so the point of the 80/20 emails is the focus of how we're actually writing these emails is relationship. And what I mean by this is that we want the person reading the emails to get a relationship with us, the brand. And so there are two ways that you can build a positive association with your brand. You can focus on giving value by giving them tactical things to make them more money, or you can focus by giving value in the form of entertainment, right? If you think about a local store, and I want you to think about like your local coffee shop that maybe you go into. I don't know about you guys, but I've got one favorite coffee shop in town here in Tamarindo in Costa Rica that I go to all the time. Do you know the reason I go to that coffee shop? It's not that the coffee's better. The food's worse than one of the other cafes that I like to go to, and it's not as nice inside. The reason I go into that cafe is that I really like the people that run the cafe. There are 3 people that work in that cafe that are very friendly. And every time I go into that cafe, we have a little chat. We have a little conversation. Look at their Instagram and I see what they're getting up to. The other cafe, the one that is better food, better coffee, better environment, and better everything, the reason I don't go to that cafe as much is that the workers are a little bit stuck up. It's a little bit cliquey inside of that, right? They like talking to some people, but they don't like talking to other people. Maybe I'm just not cool enough, but that cafe is still a nice one for me to go into, but I gravitate to the one with the relationship. And so I want you to think about like your favorite sitcom that you watch. For me, it's The Office, right? When I first started watching The Office, how many of you know Steve Carell's character, Michael Scott, right? The first season, the guy is an absolute bumbling idiot. He's walking around. He looks completely incompetent. He's pissing everybody off. You're like, this guy's a moron. How the hell am I going to keep watching this show? It's like cringy. I can't watch it. But the writers realized that in season 2 that they needed to change the way that they perceived the character. And in season 2, what they did was they gave in each of the episodes Michael and other characters redeemable moments. And so there was an episode where Michael took one of the customers to a Chili's, and Jan, who is the corporate leader, was like trying to, get that person to talk about business, and Michael was just focusing on the tacos and the margaritas and having a really good time, right? And in the end of that episode, Michael ended up showing that he was a very competent salesperson. You're like, holy shit, Michael's not a moron. He can actually sell. In another episode, Michael was the only person that showed up to Pam's art show. Everybody else didn't show up. And she cries and she hugs him. And you're like, man, Michael's really compassionate. He really cares about his team. And they give him these little redeemable moments over the series. And if you look at sitcom shows, Michael has got one of the most beloved character arcs in any sitcom. And it's because of these redeemable moments that happen. And so what I want you to think about when you're writing these 80/20 emails is in the 80%, which is the story, is you're looking to get people to fall in love with the characters in your world. And so this can be you, it can be team members, it can be family, it could be your wife or kids or your dog, it could be friends. I've often spoke about my friends inside of my emails, but we're creating a little world that they want to participate in. Even if you look at popular YouTubers, they do this. You've got the Logan Pauls of the world with all of their entourage and all of these different things. And maybe if you've got a favorite YouTuber, you know all the characters that they have inside of it. The more people you bring into the story, the easier it is to get people to fall in love with it. Now, with every email you send, you have one goal. You just want them to get to know you a little bit better with every email that you send. That's it. And so if I send an email today, I might talk about rock climbing. I might talk about my family being in England. I might talk about therapy. I might talk about not really being a big ayahuasca guy. I might be talking about how, I don't really love yoga. I might talk about any aspect of who I am as a person that could be completely unrelated to business. And so that's your goal when writing these story-based emails. Now, the second part of the email, which is the really important part, is when you start writing this email, you're just really going to be spending 150 to maybe 250 words just telling a story. And this works best If it's a recent story, something that's actually happened, you going to the supermarket, something that happened with a client that week, a neighbor that had something blow up, the fridge had something break down. It could just be any kind of random story of anything that's going on. And then the second 20% of the story is where you make it relevant to how you can help them inside of the business. We call this the transition into the soft pitch. And so when you make that transition into the soft pitch, this is basically we've given them their 80% of entertainment, and now we have earned the right to advertise to them. And so what we'll do is we'll take our story that we've told, we'll make it relevant to one aspect of our business, and then we make the call to action to say, hey, if you really want to get help with this, this is how we can do it. And so, for example, I wrote an email today where I was talking about Halloween and everything was going, Halloween crazy, and we're going into November, the last 2 months of the year, into Thanksgiving. And then I transitioned at the end and said, by the way, now we're in November. If you haven't written and done your Black Friday promotion for your business, November and December are the most profitable months of the year for most businesses. Maybe we can help. Reach out. Let's book a call. Let's plan something like that. And so the final 20% is where we bring it back together in terms of that benefit. So to recap, we want to make sure that we're doing these emails frequently, but we also want to make sure that we're writing them in a way that isn't really going to piss customers off. And remember, 30% of these people, if you email them every day, will be unsubscribed to the end of the month. But the other 700, the other 70% of people have been receiving that advertising every day and either liking it or staying consumed or staying plugged in. We want to market to the 80% of people that are sticking around, not worrying about the 20% of people who are always going to leave and we're never going to buy anyway. Now, I talked about unsubscribes. I want to talk about how these are actually good and how I actually don't even look at this metric at all inside of my business. And this is a little bit technical. It's to do with email delivery. So when you write an email, let's say you've got the 10,000 people on your list. Let's say you get a 30% open rate, right? So 3,000 people open of the 10K that you've got on that list. Now, if you keep a lot of people on that list who aren't unsubscribing and they're just deciding that they're not going to open your emails, your open rate is going to drop over time. Now, if your open rate starts to drop into the 25 or the 20%, or God forbid, even lower than that, your deliverability is going to start becoming a problem. That means that your email provider is going to start sending signals to the other providers to say, hey, watch out, this could be a spam email because not many people are opening it. And so one of the really important things to remember is that when people unsubscribe, they're opting out of receiving your emails, which means you're sending only to people that actually want to open your emails. And so I would rather be having 30% of my 700 people a month who are reading it than 20% of my 1,000 people. Really, really important to understand that inside of the process. Now, I want to talk about how are we going to go and implement these 80/20 emails? There's actually two ways that you're going to want to deploy this 100K a month email process. And doing these two things is huge because one is going to give you consistent daily money, and the second is going to give you cash windfalls, usually every 90 days. We call this the daily email metrics. And the other thing that we talk about is we call these 90-day email cash campaigns. And these are very, very different. And I want to talk about the difference between the two and how you can implement this. So first of all, most of you business owners, you only do cash campaigns, right? You don't email your customers at all, apart from once every 2-3 months when you've got something to sell them. Then you send them maybe a bunch of emails for like 5 days selling something, and then you never email them again. How is that good, right? That's absolutely saying to your prospect, hey, I only care about selling to you, which isn't a bad thing, but how are people going to perceive that? And so the first thing with the daily email matrix is that we're going to focus on those 80/20 emails. And so it's the 80% story where we're really looking to build a relationship and get people to like us and like the brand and like what we do and demonstrate value. And then the other 20% is going to be the soft pitch that we're doing. We're going to send those emails every single day, Monday through Sunday. And sometimes, God forbid, this sounds scary, we send more emails than that. We've got some clients who'll send as many as 2 to 3 emails a day, depending on the market and depending on how good they are at writing those emails. You're going to do this day in, day out, every single day, and you can usually expect to get a fairly good trickle through of results here. And so the way I always measure this is if you've got 0.3 to 0.1% click-through rate and you've got, 10% of people that are actually going to book a call on the second end, you can make a pretty good guesstimate of how many calls you should be booking every single day. So for example, if we've got 10K emails and we're getting somewhere in the region of 30 to 100 clicks, I know with a 10% conversion, that's about 3 to 10 calls a day. And so I'm just going to send that email and I'm going to look and say, okay, am I getting about 3 to 10 calls that are coming in every single day? Now, when we're doing the 90-day email cash campaigns, we're actually going to do them in a slightly different way. Now, when we do cash campaigns, and this could be a Black Friday, it could be a Halloween sale, it could be something for the summer, it could be in springtime, right? A lot of people do promotions for Easter. What you're going to do for a cash campaign, and I'm not going to go too in depth here, but it's going to be a 3 to 5 day email promotion. And what you're usually going to have is you're going to have about 7 to 14 days before where you're teasing the campaign. Hey, something big is coming. You can usually put this in the PS at the end of every email that you send, and you have what's called the warm-up phase. This is teasing people and getting them excited. Then you've got the day one cart open, right? So the cart is going to open and you're going to start selling. And usually throughout that 3 to 5 days of that promotion, you're going to send about 2 to 3 emails a day, right? 2 to 3 emails a day. Now that might sound like a lot, but remember that when we're teasing that the cart is going to open, we're actually going to tell people, hey, by the way, tomorrow a promotion starts. And when I do this promotion, I'm going to be emailing really heavily for 4 days, and then it's going to finish. And we're going to go back to just 1 email a day, right? And then finally, when you get to the last day, right, let's say it's day 4, that final day, we're going to send 5 to 6 emails a day. And what we typically find inside of these promos is that you want to have 1, a really good offer, 2, some good urgency, which is created from the promotion, and ideally a bit of scarcity as well. And when you do these, you can usually do them every 90 days. And so what this tends to do is it gets anybody that you've had calls with throughout the last 90 days to actually engage and to buy. And you do these on a regular basis as a bit of a sweep up campaign. You can often have these called draining the swamp campaigns, if you like. And so when you're looking at your 2 types of campaigns, those are the 2 different ways we like to do it. We have the daily email matrix, and then we have the 90-day cash campaigns. Again, remember guys, this is free. It doesn't cost you anything, and it creates a giant windfall of extra money from all the leads that you've already got in your system and all the new leads that are coming in. It's all extra profitability right to the bottom line for everything that you're doing in your marketing. Now, a couple of examples. I want to talk about typical open rates and typical click rates. Open rates, you're typically going to see anywhere from 25 to 35%. 30% is really healthy. If you're in the 25% range, that's okay, but it's beginning to get into a bad range. And anything that's 20% or lower is usually the danger range. At that point, we would recommend speaking to an email deliverability partner. If you're a Media Firestorm client, we have tons of connections with really great email deliverability experts that can really help you to do this. And by the way, if you're listening to this video and you're like, man, I really would like to make more money with my emails and really just like to get more traffic coming in, you should really consider joining Media Firestorm. This is our program where inside of the program, we're going to give you live examples of how to write these emails, live feedback. We often tell our clients, like every 7 days, drop some of the emails that you've written and we'll give you live feedback. And on top of that, we have 2 times a week calls. We have access to our Top 1% podcast network where you can get booked on free, high quality podcasts so that you can get more traffic into your offer, as well as that access to all of our trainings and SOPs for all of our back-end conversion systems, our front-end assets that we help you to do to get more traffic, as well as more conversion assets. Anyway, if you want more information on that, just click down in the description down below. And if you've been liking this video, give us a little like, maybe subscribe. Now, back to the content here. Open rates, 25 to 35%, pretty good. Anything less than 20% is the danger zone. For click-through rates, really you're looking at anything from 0.3 to 1% is going to be your average. 1% is going to be high, and 0.3 is going to be on the lower end. We do see some businesses that operate with 0.2% click-through rates. It's really relative depending on how often you're emailing, the quality of the prospects, how high-end your offer is, but that's about the average range that you should be looking at for these open rates. Now, we talked a bit about why we want to write story emails. I want to tell you why I don't recommend that you write value-based emails. Now, in the land of Alex Hormozi and everything that he talks about, you would think that value is the single most important thing that you should be talking about when it comes to emails. But I'm here to tell you guys that emails is not the place that you should be putting value. And here's why. When you look at your funnel and your process that you're doing, content is usually going to be right at the top of the funnel. And this is where you typically do want to put a lot of the value. For example, this video that I'm recording for you right now is actually kind of somewhere in the middle of the funnel for us. We use this content to get customers who are already interested to consume it, to become more likely to buy. But a lot of people do put content at the top of the funnel. They give a lot of value. And the goal is, sometimes nurturing like we do, and sometimes to get new customers coming in. Now, when you've got email, you've actually already got a lead. And so inside of this process, it's kind of like middle of the funnel, MOFU, tofu, mofu, and bofu, right? Top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. Inside of this process, it should actually be very conversion focused. What we're going to do is we're trying to get people to like our brand more. We're trying to engage with them more, but ultimately we're driving these call to actions to say, hey, I'd really like you to book a call. I think it's really important for you not to focus on value inside of these emails, because people get a little bit stuck with that. And they just get overwhelmed and they don't read your emails. Keep them light, keep them story-based, keep them entertaining. And so a couple of results that I think is really important here for you guys to walk away. Step one, go in and take a look at what are the average click-through rates that you're achieving inside of your business right now. If you're getting 0.2 or 0.3 or 0.5, doesn't matter, figure out how many clicks am I getting in my emails. And the second thing I want you to do is look at, well, how many emails am I sending? Right? If I'm sending one a week or one a month, or God forbid, one every 6 months, right? Look at your current volume. And the next thing I want you to do is actually just times that by doing it more frequently. So take your click-through rates, how many clicks you're getting per email, and times it by 22 or times it by 31. 22 is Monday to Friday, 31 is Monday to Sunday, doing it every single day. And once you get that number, that's going to give you your click-through rate. And the final thing I want you to do is look at how well is your call funnel converting. Now, if your call funnel isn't converting very well, if you get 100 people that go and only 3 people book a call, that's another issue that we will address for you. And maybe I'll do a video on minimum viable calendars and how to do a lot better. But take that number, of your conversion rate. If it's 3%, 2%, 1%, whatever it is, just do those numbers. Look at how many clicks, how often you're sending, and instead times it by 22 and 31. And that's going to give you how many clicks you could be generating and ultimately how many calls you could be booking. Use that to gauge where are you at inside of this process and whether you should do more. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to be doing some more videos on some of these conversion assets like the minimum viable calendar and some of these back-end conversion systems that we use to ultimately get more deals coming in. And there's a heck of a lot of additional automations and things that we can put in. For example, we have abandoned call funnel, which is when someone clicks on these links, making sure that we actually get them to book a call if they didn't follow through, and all sorts of fantastic advertising strategies you can do to retarget those individuals to really get them coming through. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, if you want more help inside of your business, feel free to go down to the description, click the Media Firestorm link, and we can see if working together makes sense. If you're a business looking to hit your first 100K or tack on the next 100K a month, we can absolutely help you. I hope you enjoyed these videos. I get a lot out of doing these now. They're really fun. And make sure you subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you on the next one.